Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. A quick thanks is in order for letting me reach my overarching goal of 800 subscribers, and we've already started quite the push for 900, so thank you a bunch. Anyway, let's keep the hype train for Zelda's 35th anniversary on the 21st by talking about a potential Skyward Sword HD in a lot more detail than I have in the past. Sure, I have talked about it a little bit in the past, but with rumours from last year's circulating around me and with a newfound love for the game, I thought that today I'd talk to you guys about what I would like from a potential Skyward Sword HD. If you like Legend of Zelda content, then please do subscribe for weekly sources of it. With all of this said, let's get into the video. The funny thing is that a Skyward Sword HD wasn't really on my radar until quite recently. In all honesty, I forgot that it was almost due its decade HD remaster. It was about August last year when rumours started to circulate that a Skyward Sword HD was on the way, and if I'm not mistaken, at the time, there was a listing on a website for the game. There was even a time where we thought the announcement was coming as soon as last year, or at least in my mind I thought it was going to happen anyway. So why do I bring all of this up? Well, let's first talk about when I think we could see the announcement happening. As with most Zelda things at the moment, it seems like this would be announced during a potential 35th anniversary Zelda Direct. In fact, for me at the moment, I think that there is at least a chance that we could see Breath of the Wild 2 news, Age of Calamity DLC, and Skyward Sword's remaster at the moment. As much as I would love to really buy into the hype for a remaster bundle of a few games, and I know I've talked about it a lot, I can't really see it happening. I want it to happen, which is why I've made those videos, and speculation is ridiculously fun, but if I'm being honest, the most that I'm expecting is Skyward Sword HD and maybe Breath of the Wild 2 during this entire year, or maybe even one of the two. I think that Skyward Sword is just perfectly timed to come out. I actually have talked about that in other videos before, so I won't open up that can of worms yet again. I personally think, and this is for basically no reason at all, it's just my own personal theory that we could see Skyward Sword HD announced in February, and then it'll give us a release month of around about May. And we may see a date like the 23rd or something like that. Again, that is just my personal theory, and as the title suggests, it's kind of what I want if a Skyward Sword HD is announced, since I'd expect Breath of the Wild in November or October. Before you click off the video because of all the business and release date talk, I believe that it's time to get into my real wishes for the remaster of Skyward Sword if it does come into the light. First of all is the easiest assertion to talk about. How can Skyward Sword be ported over to the Switch? The game ran on the idea that motion controls need to be at the centre of the experience. You would think that a port or remaster of Skyward Sword would be near to impossible on the Switch, or at least when you're trying to use it in handheld mode anyway. Well, the thing is, I want there to be an option to turn off motion controls, and I think this is probably on the list of a ton of people who want Skyward Sword on the Switch. But how exactly do I want the Zelda team, or maybe even Grezzo, to quote-unquote sort out these motion controls? Well, I think that the best way to do it is in a very similar way to Mario Galaxy when you're playing in docked. The gyroscope has been used in absolutely amazing ways ever since the Switch came out. Ports that we never thought would even have a chance of coming to the Switch came out, even back in 2018, and that's without discussing the mostly genius ways that the gyroscope was utilised in place of an infrared sensor in Mario Galaxy. Both Galaxy and Captain Toad Treasure Tracker were amazing games nonetheless, and some would even say that their ports even outweigh their originals. So of course in docked mode they could very easily just use the same gyroscope sensor that they've been using for these other ports. Even the motion sensor at the bottom of a Switch controller could probably be used in some wacky ways to determine whether the controller's at the right, left, up or down. But as we've seen through the Mario Galaxy port, properly calibrating this could be a pain. So simply let there be a calibration button yet again, like Mario Galaxy. A lot of this port would just be taking elements from the Galaxy port, but putting a new sheet of paint over it. But now it's time to get into the less easy things to scuff around. How would a casual player, playing in handheld, or someone who's playing in docked and just wants to play without motion controls, play the game? Well, I've thought up a solution, but I don't think by any means that it's the best solution. So by all means tell me a solution you'd like in the comments below. In the original Skyward Sword, we weren't given a right stick to look around like we've seen in Breath of the Wild. We would press Z or Z on the nunchuck to look around. Just so you know, I've had to say that since some people in my comments just can't seem to grasp that people say things differently. I don't know. And this was the same for many games in the Zelda series for a long time, and it was a decent process. It never became too annoying since the games were just that good. I propose that the Zelda team somehow incorporates the right stick as a control method, since even in the original Skyward Sword a simple right stick wasn't utilised. Depending on which way you're pointing your right stick also coordinates to where your sword is pointing. For example, when you're moving forward in the original Skyward Sword, it became very obvious very quickly that it was motion controlled, as the sword would mostly be held above Link's head, It was one of the most immersion breaking things in that game in my opinion, and I think it was a sin to include it as the rest of the game actually carved such a perfect level of immersion to sink into. I think that my solution would fix this, as most of the time your right stick would be right in the middle. This could mean that the sword was pointing below Link, much like it was for the hero of Twilight in Twilight Princess. Perhaps this would be much harder to implement than I'm making it seem. In fact, I'm almost certain that it's much harder, but I'm sure that the Zelda team could pull it off. Sharply pulling your stick to any direction could correlate to your sword in game, which means if you sharply pulled your right stick to the right, your sword would slash to the right. Personally speaking, this would make enemies like the Deku Babas a lot more fun to fight than having some motion controls screw up every now and then. Again, maybe this isn't the best solution, so do leave your solutions to this problem in the comments if you'd like to see it come to the Switch. Maybe you don't even think they'll incorporate a non-motion controlled way, just let me know. Gyroscope aiming should be included no matter what. Next up, I'm going to talk about any side content that I hope they add. Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD had some pretty big inclusions. Nothing that had anyone's socks knocking off or whatever, but it was some pretty cool extra content. In the case of Twilight Princess HD, you could access the Cave of Shadows through an amiibo of Wolf Link, which technically was the Cave of Ordeals with a new coat of paint, but it did give you a wallet that could hold 9,999 rupees, which, I don't need to tell you, is a crazy amount. It also added smaller functions such as the mechanic of pressing a single button to switch to and from Wolf Link. A few side quest items that made the quest easier, hero mode, this increased the difficulty quite a bit, less tiers of light to collect, and who can forget the cool but superfluous Miiverse stamps. So that's fair enough, but barring that, Wind Waker HD had some pretty notable changes. Along these was Hero Mode, which fixed the issue of Wind Waker being very easy, much like most 3D Zelda games. The Swift Sail, this fixed a large issue of players waiting ridiculous times to get to certain islands by boat. It also made the Triforce fetch quest slightly easier to swallow. I personally appreciated this a whole lot since that quest is by far my biggest issue with the entire game by a large margin. Other minor changes included the upgraded Picto Box, the dual gamepad function, and of course the Tingle Bottle. These can be pretty rapidly skipped over though. But what do I hope comes to Skyward Sword? I really, sincerely hope that we get something akin to a cool gauntlet fighting challenges, something like that. I know that the game featured the boss rush that granted you the Hylian shield, but I think in this case I'd love for there to be a gauntlet such as the Cave of Shadows or something similar to this in Skyward Sword's potential remaster. Of course, one of the givens for these remasters is the inclusion of a hero mode. I mean, Skyward Sword was already hard enough down to motion controls, but it'd be given an extra level of challenge and replayability if the team could add this mode once more. Another hope in the gameplay department for Skyward Sword HD would just be a cool new side quest. Skyward Sword is synonymous with cool side quests, that's for sure. Some even say it contends with Majora's Mask in this area of expertise. I beg to differ, and probably always will, but I will not deny that the game had some of the coolest side quests in the series, and maybe some questionable ones too sometimes. Well, I would love if we could just have one more small side quest added for the game's remaster that could give the player just a little item for their troubles. I'm not sure what kind of item it could be, considering I've already used the idea of a big wallet in the Cave of Shadows idea, but maybe an item that's a callback to Breath of the Wild or some way, or something like that. My final hope is that the game makes it easier to finish the Goddess Cube side quest. It was cool to revisit certain areas for the quest, but just as an accessibility option, it would be cool to make it slightly easier with a map of all Goddess Cubes or something like that. This could just be me asking for this, but I'm thinking of the kids here. Well, what do you want from a potential Skyward Sword HD remaster? Do you think that it'll be revealed for the series' 35th anniversary? Do you want some more quests? And how do you think the control scheme can work? Go down to those comments and discuss this with other people and of course me as I try to get around to every comment I physically can. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, then please subscribe and like for more Zelda content on the lead up to the series' 35th anniversary. This video was brought to you in small part by my patrons, and in largest part to Sumji, my top paying patron. If you'd like to join them, then you can for just £1 a month if you look down in my description. Along with that link, you'll also find the link to my other media platforms too. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I look forward to being back with another video next week. Please stay safe, and I'll see you soon.